Billionaire gives 5 black credit cards to test 5 women. What his maid bought left him speechless. Before we dive into the story, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. 5 women stood before him, each clutching a black card that could buy dreams, or destroy them. Laughter, greed, and hunger danced in their eyes. But when his maid, the quiet woman who dusted his halls with calloused hands, returned with her purchase, silence fell. Even the billionaire's heart stuttered. Backhand index pointing right. If you had a billionaire's black card for just one day, what would you buy first? Comment below. I want to hear your answer. The city lights of New York glittered like stars trapped in glass, but inside the penthouse of billionaire Gregory Harlow, everything was heavy, controlled, and silent. The marble floors echoed with every footstep, and expensive art lined the walls, yet not a single piece of it felt like home. Gregory was a man who had everything. Or at least, that's what the world believed. A self-made billionaire in his early 50s, his empire stretched across finance, real estate, and technology. Yet behind the polished smile he wore in boardrooms, behind the power suits and luxury cars, was a hollowness no amount of money could fill. He had grown tired of people. Tired of their games. Everyone around him wanted something: his money, his influence, his access. And he was done with fake smiles. One evening, while sipping on a glass of aged scotch and gazing out at the skyline, a mischievous idea formed. He would conduct an experiment. 5 women, 5 black cards, no limits. He wanted to see what people revealed about themselves when handed unimaginable power. Some would reach for luxury, some for vanity, and others for nothing at all. But Gregory wasn't prepared for the 6th silent participant in his little game, the woman who worked in the shadows of his mansion every day, unseen and underestimated. And then, unnoticed by the group, came Amara, Gregory's maid. She wasn't invited. She simply moved quietly through the room with her cleaning tray, a humble woman in her 30s with skin the color of polished mahogany and eyes that carried entire lifetimes of stories. While the 5 women laughed, whispered, and eyed the billionaire, Amara bent her head and polished the glass table, her movements graceful and practiced, as if she were invisible. Gregory stepped forward, dressed immaculately in a tailored navy suit. His voice carried authority that silenced the room. "Ladies," he began, holding up 5 matte black cards, "these are yours for the day. No limits. No restrictions. Spend them as you wish. At the end of the day, I'll see what you chose, and what that says about you." Gasps, squeals, and laughter filled the room. Vanessa clutched her pearls. Monique immediately pulled out her phone for a selfie with the card. Caroline smirked knowingly, as if she already knew how to win. Amara paused in her dusting, her brow furrowed as she overheard his words. A black card. No limit. She shook her head and whispered under her breath, "Some people have too much money to play with." Gregory's sharp ears caught it. He turned his head just slightly, eyes locking on her for the first time in months. Something about the steadiness in her gaze made him pause. Unlike the others, she wasn't dazzled. She wasn't begging. She was unimpressed. And for reasons he couldn't explain, it unsettled him. If you were standing in that room with those women, would you see Gregory's test as an opportunity, or a trap? Leave your thoughts in the comments. The 5 women hurried out, chauffeured cars waiting to whisk them to the most luxurious stores in Manhattan. Laughter echoed in the marble halls after they left. Gregory chuckled to himself, swirling his drink. But as he turned, he noticed Amara carefully placing fresh flowers into a vase. Her hands were cracked, scarred from years of labor. Yet she arranged each bloom with tenderness, as if beauty didn't need a price tag. Gregory tilted his head. For the first time, he wondered, what would she buy if she had the same chance? And the limousine engines purred like lions waiting to be unleashed outside the billionaire's penthouse. The 5 women nearly stumbled over one another as they rushed out the grand doors, their laughter bubbling into the cool Manhattan air. The black cards were clutched like tickets to heaven, and each of them already imagined how their day would unfold. Gregory Harlow remained behind, standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse, sipping his scotch. He could almost hear the chaotic thoughts swirling in their heads. Diamonds, luxury bags, designer dresses, yachts, trips across the world. It was predictable, too predictable. He expected them to buy glitter and showpieces. But his eyes wandered again to the lone figure in the background. Amara. She was polishing the railing of the staircase, her uniform faded from years of wear, her movements steady, methodical. She had heard the laughter, the squeals, the rush of excitement, but her expression remained calm, almost distant. Gregory found himself curious. "Amara," he called, his voice echoing in the empty penthouse. She straightened, startled. "Yes, sir." "If you had one of these," he lifted the last black card between his fingers, letting the morning light glint off its surface, "what would you buy?" Amara froze, staring at the piece of plastic that represented unlimited power. Her lips parted, but no sound came out at first. Then softly, she answered, "Nothing I'd buy could ever impress you, sir." Gregory raised a brow. "Try me." She hesitated, then shook her head. "I think I'd buy something for someone else." It was a simple statement, yet it cut deeper than the laughter of the women who had left minutes ago. Gregory felt something shift inside him, though he quickly masked it with a smirk. "Perhaps I should have invited you into this little game, Amara." Her eyes flicked up to his, steady and unflinching. "It isn't a game for people like me, Mr. Harlow." And with that, she returned to her cleaning. But Gregory couldn't stop thinking about it. Vanessa, the socialite, stepped onto Fifth Avenue like a queen reclaiming her throne. The chauffeurs carried her bags even before she bought them. Cartier, Tiffany, Chanel. She stormed into each boutique with her card flashing like lightning. A diamond necklace here, a crocodile skin Birkin bag there. To Vanessa, the black card wasn't money. It was proof she deserved the life she always claimed was hers. Her laughter rang in the air as jewelers bowed and assistants scrambled. Within hours, she had racked up purchases that could buy entire apartments in the Bronx. "Power looks good on me," she said into her diamond-studded phone, snapping a selfie with her overflowing bags. Monique, the influencer, made her way to Soho with her camera crew in tow. Every swipe of the card was content. A luxury spa day broadcasted live to her followers. A custom designer gown tailored on the spot. A private rooftop brunch with champagne flowing like water. "Say hello to Limitless Living, fam," she chirped into her phone, the black card gleaming between her manicured fingers. Hearts and fire emojis exploded in her live chat. To her, the purchases weren't about herself, they were about maintaining her image, her status. The card wasn't a gift, it was a prop. Caroline, the finance executive, took a different path. She strolled straight into a high-rise office on Wall Street and demanded a private consultation. No shopping bags, no jewels. She used the black card to open accounts, transfer funds, and make investments that turned the billionaire's generosity into a potential empire for herself. "Money breeds more money," she muttered with a cold smile. "That's the only real test." By the end of the afternoon, she had secured 3 properties, 2 startup investments, and a luxury car fleet, all in her name. Jade, the actress, floated into a theater district boutique. Dresses shimmered around her like second skins of stardom. She imagined herself on red carpets, the world gasping at her beauty. With the card, she bought a wardrobe that screamed celebrity. She rented out an entire theater hall, hosting an impromptu performance with herself at center stage. Finally, she whispered to her reflection in the mirror, draped in sequins, "The world will see me as I deserve." Her purchases weren't about survival, they were about being seen. Tasha, the single mother, held the card like it was burning her fingers. She walked past luxury boutiques, shaking her head. Instead, she went north, into Harlem. Into the neighborhood she knew, where children played with broken toys, and families lined up at food banks. Her first stop was a grocery store. She filled carts with food until the staff blinked in disbelief. She paid off bills for struggling parents. She donated computers to a school. She visited a community shelter, swiping the card over and over until her hands trembled. Tears ran down her cheeks as she whispered, "My babies won't grow up the way I did. Not anymore." For Tasha, the card wasn't about wealth. It was about freedom, from hunger, from fear, from lack. Gregory watched from afar, his phone buzzing with real-time updates from his staff shadowing each woman. He smirked at Vanessa's greed, shook his head at Monique's vanity, raised a brow at Caroline's cunning, sighed at Jade's self-indulgence, and felt a rare flicker of respect at Tasha's selflessness. But it was Amara who kept intruding on his thoughts. Her words echoed, "I'd buy something for someone else." For the first time in years, Gregory Harlow found himself restless. Money had always been predictable, but people like Amara, unshaken by it, were not. Late that afternoon, Amara was still working when Gregory approached her again. He held out the last black card. "Take it," he said. She froze. "Sir." "Take it. Just for today. Buy whatever you want. No limits." Amara shook her head. "Mr. Harlow, I can't." "You can. And you will," Gregory interrupted firmly. "Call it an extension of my experiment." Her eyes narrowed. "And if I refuse?" "Then you'll never know what you could have done with it." Amara hesitated. The weight of the card in her hand felt unreal when she finally took it. Unlimited money? She had scrubbed his floors for years, earning barely enough to keep her little sister in school. The idea of spending like the women earlier felt foreign, almost wrong. Yet, something inside her stirred. This wasn't about her. It never was. She clutched the card tightly, whispered a prayer under her breath, and left the penthouse. Gregory stood at the window again, heart pounding in a way he hadn't expected. He had no idea where she would go, but he knew one thing: whatever Amara chose, it would not be predictable. And that terrified him. If someone like Amara, hardworking, humble, overlooked, suddenly had unlimited money for a day, what do you think she'd do first? Comment your guess before you read on. That evening, as the city's neon lights came alive, Gregory's staff returned with reports from the 5 women. Bags, receipts, bank statements, investment portfolios, all neatly filed for him to review. But there was still one folder missing. Amara's. Gregory sat in his leather chair, restless, staring at the clock. What could she possibly be doing with his card? Why did he care so much? When the penthouse doors finally opened, Amara stepped inside, not with designer bags, not dripping in jewels, not even with food stacked around her. She carried a single item. And when she placed it in front of him, the billionaire who thought he had seen everything went silent. The penthouse was quiet again. Too quiet. The faint hum of the city outside pressed against the glass walls like a distant symphony, but inside, only the tick of Gregory Harlow's grandfather clock filled the silence. Amara stood before him, her uniform dusted from the long day, a small bag clutched in her hand. Not a designer bag. Not a luxury boutique logo. Just a plain, paper bag folded neatly at the top. Gregory frowned, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "That's it?" he asked, gesturing toward the bag. "One item? After everything I offered?" Amara nodded. "Yes, sir." He leaned forward, curiosity overcoming impatience. "Show me." With steady hands, Amara opened the bag and pulled out a simple leather-bound book. Its cover bore no brand, no gilded letters. Just plain brown leather, stitched with care. She placed it gently on the glass table between them. Gregory raised a brow. "A journal." "Yes," Amara said softly. "But not just any journal. It's handmade. I had it custom engraved." She slid it closer so he could see. On the cover, pressed into the leather with gold lettering, were the words, "For the children of tomorrow." Gregory's eyes narrowed. What children? Amara looked up at him, her dark eyes unwavering. "The ones I tutor at the community center. The kids no one notices. The ones whose dreams fade before they ever start. I bought this to begin something bigger. A program. A record of their hopes, their voices, their stories. They deserve to be remembered." Her brow furrowed. "See what?" He hesitated, then gestured toward the children. "Them. What your journal is for." Amara sighed, standing slowly. "This isn't for show, Mr. Harlow. These kids don't need pity, they need consistency." She guided him through the room. Children of all ages sat at mismatched tables, some doing homework, others coloring, some just sitting quietly. Their clothes were worn, but their eyes were alive with curiosity. "This is Jamal," Amara said, ruffling the hair of the boy she had been helping. "He wants to be a writer, but his school barely has working textbooks. That's why I bought the journal. To start recording their voices, their dreams. So they know someone believes they matter." She led him to a teenage girl practicing on the broken piano. "This is Layla. Her father works 3 jobs. She taught herself piano from YouTube videos. Imagine what she could do with lessons, or a working instrument." Then to a boy in the corner sketching superheroes on scraps of paper. Marcus wants to be an architect. But he's failing math because his school doesn't have enough teachers. Gregory's chest tightened as each story unfolded. These weren't statistics. They weren't charity cases. They were lives. Futures. Dreams fragile as glass, and yet stronger than steel in their determination. He had seen children at galas, children of millionaires dressed in silk and diamonds. But these children carried a fire money couldn't buy. For the first time, Gregory felt his billions meant nothing. Later, when the children were busy in their activities, Amara pulled Gregory aside into a quiet office. "Why are you here, really?" she asked, crossing her arms. Gregory hesitated. Honesty was not his habit. But Amara's steady gaze left no room for pretense. "Because of that journal," he admitted. "Because you unsettled me." Her eyes softened slightly. "Mr. Harlow, you don't need to prove anything to me." "It's not about proving," he said, almost frustrated. "It's about remembering. I grew up poor too, Amara. People forget that about me. I clawed my way to the top, but somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing people. I stopped seeing myself." Amara studied him, then spoke quietly. "Money changes people. But it doesn't have to destroy them." The word struck him deeper than any business rival's insult ever had. That evening, Gregory called a meeting at his penthouse. The 5 women returned, expecting judgment, perhaps even rewards. They dressed in their finest, glittered with jewels, painted their lips with arrogance. Amara stood in the corner, her uniform simple as ever. Tasha beside her, humble but strong. Gregory rose, the journal in his hand. His voice carried through the marble halls. This test was never about spending. It was about character. And today, I've seen what true wealth looks like. He turned to Vanessa, Monique, Caroline, and Jade. "You 4 showed me reflections of greed, vanity, selfish ambition, and delusion. Perhaps that's who you are, or perhaps that's who you think you need to be. But I cannot reward that." The women gasped, fumed, protested. Vanessa shouted about her diamonds. Monique raged about her followers. Caroline insisted her investments were smart. Jade cried that she had finally tasted fame. Gregory silenced them with one raised hand. Amara bought a journal. A simple, leather journal. And in it lies more power than all your purchases combined. Because she chose to give children a voice. And Tasha, with her compassion, chose to lift her community. These are the only choices worthy of respect. He set the journal down firmly on the table. "So here is my decision. From this day forward, I will fund Amara's vision. A scholarship program. A community initiative. A future written not in marble or gold, but in lives changed. And Tasha, your heart for your people will not be ignored. I will ensure every family you help today has support tomorrow." The women erupted in protests, but Gregory ignored them. His gaze fell only on Amara. "You reminded me of who I was," he said softly. "And who I still can be." Amara's eyes glistened, but she shook her head. "I never wanted your money, Mr. Harlow. I only wanted someone to see them. To really see them." Gregory's voice trembled, though he tried to hide it. "And you made me see. That's something no one has done in years." For a moment, silence held the room, broken only by the beating of hearts. Amara glanced at the journal, then back at him. "If you mean this, Mr. Harlow, it's not about charity. It's about commitment. These children don't need a billionaire's guilt. They need consistency, hope, and a chance. Will you give them that?" Gregory swallowed hard. For the first time, a billionaire was speechless. Then with quiet conviction he answered, "Yes. Whatever it takes." 2 weeks later, the marble halls of Gregory Harlow's penthouse echoed with voices unlike any it had heard before. Reporters. Community leaders. Teachers. Parents. Children. At the center stood Gregory himself, not in a power suit, but in a simple navy jacket, his tie loose, his expression human. Beside him stood Amara, dressed modestly but glowing with dignity, and Tasha, her hands clasped nervously, eyes wide with gratitude. Gregory cleared his throat, his voice carrying into the sea of cameras. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "I once believed wealth was about accumulation. That success meant climbing higher than anyone else. But I was wrong. True wealth is not what you keep, it's what you give. He lifted the leather-bound journal, its golden words catching the light. This journal was bought with my black card, but it holds something money cannot buy: vision. Amara, a woman this world too often overlooks, chose to fill it with the dreams of children. And today, I pledge to make those dreams real. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I am funding the Tomorrow Foundation, a scholarship and community program that will provide education, mentorship, and opportunity to children across Harlem and beyond. Not a one-time donation. Not a charity gala. A lifelong commitment. Applause thundered through the room. Parents wept. Reporters scribbled furiously. The children who had come stared at Gregory as though he were a different man. But Gregory wasn't finished. He turned toward Amara, his voice gentler. And none of this would exist without her. The maid who became my teacher. The woman who reminded me what humanity looks like. Amara will lead this foundation, with full authority to shape it as she envisions. Amara's eyes widened. Mr. Harlow. He cut her off softly. Gregory. From now on, call me Gregory. Tears welled in her eyes as the room erupted again in applause. Of course, not everyone celebrated. Vanessa, Caroline, Monique, and Jade watched the announcement online, their faces twisted with disbelief. This is absurd, Vanessa hissed. He threw away fortune and prestige on kids in Harlem? Caroline scoffed. No businessman invests in people with no return. He'll regret this. Monique rolled her eyes at her phone. My followers think it's cute. But honestly? He wasted a brand opportunity on sentiment. Jade flung her sequin dress across the room. And what about me? He promised me fame. But the world wasn't listening to them anymore. For the first time, the world was listening to Amara. The weeks turned into months, and the Tomorrow Foundation became more than a promise. Gregory's billions flowed into action. A crumbling building in Harlem was renovated into a state-of-the-art learning center. Computers, books, musical instruments, art supplies, all free for children who had never dared to dream of such things. Amara walked the halls of the center, no longer in a maid's uniform, but in simple clothes that carried authority without arrogance. She greeted each child by name, remembering their dreams, writing them down in the journal that had started it all. Jamal, she said one afternoon, handing him a new set of notebooks, your first story deserves to be written here. Layla, she smiled at the piano, now gleaming and perfectly tuned, let's hear that song you've been practicing. Marcus, she crouched beside the boy sketching, now with real drafting tools, this is how architects design buildings. One day, you'll design one too. Gregory visited often, but not as a distant benefactor. He sat with the children, listened to their stories, sometimes even helped with homework. His stern billionaire mask cracked into genuine laughter more times than he cared to admit. For the first time in decades, Gregory Harlow felt alive. One evening, after the center had quieted, Gregory found Amara writing in the journal. May I ask you something? He said. She nodded, pen stilling. Why you? Why do you care so much, when most people would have taken the money and run? Amara's eyes grew distant. Because I was one of them. I grew up in a neighborhood just like this. My mother worked 3 jobs. My father was gone. The only reason I ever finished school was because one teacher believed in me. She bought me my first notebook, told me my voice mattered. That one notebook changed my life. So when I held that black card, I thought, maybe it's time to give that gift back. Gregory swallowed hard, emotion tightening his throat. You've done more with a single journal, he whispered, than I did with entire empires. Amara smiled softly. Then maybe it's time your empires served something greater. Months later, the first results of the Tomorrow Foundation began to bloom. Jamal stood before an audience, reading his short story published in the local paper. His mother wept in the front row. Layla performed her first piano recital, the audience rising in a standing ovation as her fingers danced across the keys. Marcus entered a youth architecture competition and won, his designs displayed in galleries downtown. Each child's victory was a ripple, spreading outward. The foundation grew, inspiring other philanthropists, drawing volunteers, igniting a movement. And every night, Amara added new dreams to the journal, its pages swelling with voices that refused to be silenced. Gregory's reputation shifted. No longer just the ruthless billionaire, headlines now called him the man who gave his fortune back to the people. At first, he was uncomfortable with the praise. But Amara reminded him, "It's not about you, Gregory. It's about them. Stay focused." And he did. He sold off one of his luxury yachts, donating the funds to build more centers. He canceled an extravagant gala, redirecting the budget to scholarships. The world watched in awe as a man who once epitomized greed became a symbol of giving. For the first time, Gregory didn't feel hollow. 1 year after the experiment began, the Tomorrow Foundation held its first anniversary celebration. The community center was filled with music, laughter, and the smell of home-cooked meals. Children ran through the halls, parents embraced, and teachers beamed with pride. Gregory stood at the entrance, watching it all unfold. For once, he didn't feel like the richest man in the room, he felt like the luckiest. Amara approached, the journal in her hands. "It's full," she said. Gregory blinked. "Already?" "Yes," she smiled. "Every page, filled with their dreams. We'll need another one." He chuckled softly, his eyes misting. "Then let's make a library." Together, they stepped onto the small stage. The children gathered, chanting, "Tomorrow. Tomorrow." Gregory raised his hand, his voice breaking as he spoke. "This is not the end. This is only the beginning. The children of tomorrow are the leaders of today. And as long as I live, I will stand with them." The room erupted in applause, but Gregory barely heard it. His eyes were on Amara, who nodded with quiet pride. For the first time, the billionaire who thought he had everything realized the truth. He had nothing, until he gave it away. Thanks for watching. Ensure you subscribe for more interesting stories.